Hi there, Pride Plant Girl here. I'm in the garden today and I'm getting ready to pick these black turtle beans. I noticed yesterday they're looking like they're dried out and ready to be picked, so it's the first time I've grown them and I'm anxious to see how many I get off of here and how well they did, and that'll give me an idea of if I like growing the dried beans like this, and if I did, how many I should be growing for next year. So come along, let's pick these beans and shell them out and see what we get. I'm not sure if they're all ready, but there's quite a few that look good here. So I was out here yesterday and I picked one and opened it up, and they look pretty good and dried in there. So we'll pick them and see how many we get here. It's harder to tell which ones are dry because it's early in the morning. These are a bit damp. But we're due for rain today or tomorrow, so hopefully it comes, and I want to get these beans off before then. This is going to take me a while. I can tell they don't come off as easily as regular beans, and I have to kind of feel through to see which ones are good. But I'll bring you back. That's what I've gotten so far, and I've done this much, and I have that much to go. And now, of course, when you shell them down, they're going to be much less. But I'll bring you back when I have these done, and we'll have a look at them. Well, this little container obviously wasn't enough. I'm about a third of the way through, so in they go. That should be lots of room now. Okay, so I got them all picked. Sorry, there's mosquitoes. Okay, so I got them all picked. I got a pretty decent bucket of them here. So I'm going to be shelling these out. And while I was out there, I picked out any of the dead plants and leaves that were laying around that I could grab and clean that up as well. So there's still quite a few hanging on these plants. I'd say almost as many as that I have picked off today. So I'll be coming back, I'm guessing, in a week. I don't know. We're about 2.5 weeks from our first average frost here, so won't be much more than that, I'm thinking. So I'll be coming back out and picking the rest, but I'll get these shelled out today and give you a look at what I got out of this. This is about 4 feet by 1 feet of plants, and they're spaced. I actually spaced these, I think, almost accurately. It looks like they were about 6 inches apart in any direction. So I'll get them shelled out and let you have a look. While I was out here, I noticed that the burgundy beans and green beans look like they have a few left on them. I've pulled out the yellow beans. They were looking pretty sad. A lot of aphids and canola beetles back, so I think they had a heyday with those. But the burgundy beans and the green beans are still doing their thing there. So I'm going to go over and pick a few of those, and then I'll get these shelled out. So there's a few in there that I picked yesterday just to see if they were dry enough. And now I'm just going to go through, shell these ones out. We'll see how many we get. It's early morning, so the plants, had that little bit of a dewiness to them. It was hard to tell which pods were good and which weren't, but as I went along, I realized that it seemed like the ones that were dried out felt more like kind of a damp, heavy paper, whereas the other ones felt more like leather. So I'm sure if I went through in the afternoon, because I didn't notice that so much yesterday, so if I went out in the heat of the day, probably be better, but the lighting would be worse for you guys to see, and the flea beetles would be so bad out there by then. They seem to get worse as the heat goes up. Look at all those beans in there. So I'll go through this bucket and get these all out of their shells, and we'll see what I wind up with. I love getting up in the early morning, getting these jobs done before the sun gets too hot in August, and I can watch all the birds and butterflies and visitors to the yard that seem to come out in the early hours. In August is when the hummingbirds seem to come and visit my garden. I don't know if it's all the aphids that are flying around this time of year or what draws them, or if they're on a migration pattern. But I always enjoy watching them. Well, here's the beans. There were a few like this one that are a little large and plump still. So I'm going to take these in, and I think I'll lay them out on a pan for, I don't know, a few days, a week, whatever it takes till I feel like they're good and dry. And then I'll put them in a mason jar. So thanks for joining me today in my garden as I try out this black bean thing, this dried bean thing that I'm eager to give a whirl at. So this was about, I would guess, probably about half of the beans that were on the plants, and I still have several out there that I'll give another week or so and see how dry they are. And I'll probably get about this much more, I'm guessing, once they're done. That's not too bad of a pile of beans, I don't think, so I'll be excited to try these in different recipes and that, instead of having to buy canned beans that you don't know how they were processed or handled exactly. It would be nice to have these to use out of my own garden. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.